So basically, bottom line, these people, Ketanji Browns of the world and others like her, NAACP as a group, they really don't believe that black people are capable of thinking for themselves. Remember the old pictures when back in, I don't know, the day with racist behavioral intelligence,
Yes.
they had black people coming from the monkeys and going up the chart. That's what they think of us as. They are the ones who think that we are chimpanzees and monkeys, and they think that we are animals, not in the human sense. They really believe that we are primates in need of their whatever.
Today, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments today in a case originating in Louisiana v. Callais, centered around how legislatures should consider race when drawing congressional districts. In this next clip, we have Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson discussing the case in oral arguments, and she compares black people not electing their preferred candidates to disabled people not being able to enter buildings.
I'm thinking of the fact that remedial action, absent discriminatory intent, is really not a new idea in the civil rights laws. And my kind of paradigmatic example of this is something like the ADA. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the backdrop of a world that was generally not accessible to people with disabilities. And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant. Congress said the facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible. I guess I don't understand why that's not what's happening here. The idea in Section 2 is that we are responding to current day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system, right? They're disabled. In fact, we use the word disable in Milligan. We say that's a way in which you see that these processes are not equally open.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Mm-hmm. So, Nicole, what is she talking about when she's saying that there are processes in place where minorities are the outcomes have been unequal due to some type of racial disparity? That's what I'm confused on. And she comparing that to the disadvantage of the disabled.
Right. So what she's saying is the process disables black voters from choosing black people for their congressional seats. That's her argument. Her argument is that given the opportunity to vote for whomever they like is not good enough because they need a certain number of people to come from black districts to be black. Now, here's the rub with this. This is how Democrats do everything. When you take a look at their national bylaws, they have a man and a woman of this, a man and a woman of that. They live their life in these little silos. The argument then becomes, does the entire country now have to follow the Democrat plan that says, what if a black person chooses a white candidate? You vote for the white guy because you like the white guy. The white guy does great work. You pick the Filipino dude. He does great work. But coming from a black district, if your only recourse is to vote for the two black people that they tell you the only two black people that you can vote for, is that not, quote unquote, disabling that particular electorate? Yes, her argument is circular. It's like a circular firing squad. We are not going to say these black people are going to have to elect a black person. That's what they want. They want these black districts so that there's a greater likelihood that there'll be a black candidate that comes out of that. What I'm saying is we should not say that this is a majority minority place and this is the place where we're going to get a black candidate. We can get a black candidate from anywhere. Wesley Hunt, almost all white district. right? Byron Donalds is running for the governor of Florida, not just Black Florida, but all of Florida. This makes Black people, as she says, disabled. Their view of us being children on the world stage is there in her argument. This is a maternalistic school of thought because Black people aren't smart enough to pick their own electeds. We have to help them.
Yeah, let's get into the details of the case, and then I want to bring you in, Shelley. So this is Louisiana has 6 seats in the U.S. House. Black residents make up about 1/3 of Louisiana's population. After the 2020 census and redistricting, the Louisiana legislature, which is Republican controlled, adopted a map giving only 1 majority Black district, leaving 5 majority white districts. So my question here is, why are we focused on the race? That's my first question. I don't understand what the difference does that matter?
Okay, so they're using the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the subsequent changes or additions to that, number one. So that's what they're basing this on. So basically that act says, basically Black people had to have access to voting, in a nutshell.
Right, we know that.
She's saying, Ketanji Brown basically is saying being Black is now a disability.
Exactly.
Being Black, so now we have to use the ADA Disability Act to coincide with or overlap whatever the VRA, because now being Black is a disability, and now we need the lawyers, the politicians, the government to make all this voting, do everything they can to make Black people or give them the opportunity to vote Black, because being Black is a disability. So now we have to elevate it where you can't discriminate against being Black. If you do that without making the districts, then you are discriminating, because also part of the Voting Rights Act, the different sections, says that there are certain minority groups and certain language groups that you cannot discriminate against. Right. Basically, certainly, definitely on color, creed, all that stuff. So basically, bottom line, these people, Ketanji Browns of the world and others like her, NAACP as a group, they really don't believe that Black people are capable of thinking for themselves. Remember the old pictures when back in, I don't know, the day with racism, behavioral intelligence, and they had Black people coming from the monkeys and going up the chart? That's what they think of us as. They are the ones who think that we are chimpanzees and monkeys, and they think that we are animals, not in the human sense. They really believe that we are primates in need of their, whatever, education, their guidance. They certainly need to draw districts so that we are only given the opportunity to vote, and we only see people that look like us in skin color because that's your disability. So you have to be given an opportunity to vote for a disabled person.
Yeah. And so the legal challenge under the Voting Rights Act came up because Black voters and civil rights groups sued, arguing the map diluted their voting strength in violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which forbids election practices to dilute minority voting power, even absent proof of discriminatory intent. So basically, this Republican-controlled legislature change the districts.
Yes, they redistrict.
Right.
We talked about this
before.
We brought this up when we were talking about redistricting. But see, here's the rub.
And they redistrict, and the way they redistrict, now there are less Black districts. Is this what it is?
Yes, they're saying there's fewer opportunities for Black people to be elected because the districts they're reapportioned, which they're supposed to be based on population. Okay,
thank you.
But just so happens that because of the demographics, remember, demographics, the category or the field of demography, there are 3 main components: migration, deaths, and births. Yes. This is what changes an area, a geographic area. Yes. So Louisiana has had some incoming, outgoing, I'm talking about legal citizens, incoming, outgoing, births, deaths.
Especially
so now it looks a little different. It may not be mostly Black in whatever those areas were. So they are apportioning it based on the census of the Louisianans.
Right. Listen, and not only that, listen, here in Maryland, and this is why this is very interesting to me, and I talked about it before in another show. When we talk about redistricting for minority groups, technically, Republicans are a minority group here in this very blue state, right? So when they redistrict our voting districts and they carved out all of the Republican areas into these little tiny pieces to blend in with these bigger Democrat pieces, they did indeed dilute our vote. So we sued them and we lost. You know why? Because it doesn't blank and matter, right? You want to win an election, you got to get out here and fight for it. So what did we do? We elected a Republican governor, Larry Hogan, who took the first damn map that came available. Don't even get me started. I'm still salty about it. Don't even get me started. We used to be 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats congressionally here in the state of Maryland. Now, what are we? 7-1.
7-1.
And he's saber rattling with the one that we have. Absolutely, because all it's going to take to make it harder for Andy Harris to win that seat, because the eastern shore of Maryland is less population dense than the western side of Maryland. So they'll just add in a little bit more of Anne Arundel County into his district, and he won't be able to amass enough votes, at least in their mind, to get him across the finish line to be the only Republican elected in this state. Now, I'm saying if Ketanji Brown is going to say that, you know, if you're a minority, you're disabled, then all the Republicans in this state should develop a limp. You hear me?
Exactly.
Let's limp and get us 4 more seats. But that's not fair, and it's not right. It is not the American way. That's not how we do it here. And she knows better than that. That's why she's reaching with this ADA stuff. But calling black people disabled and said NAACP says nothing.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Oh, they love it.
Nothing?
They love it.
Come on now.
Yeah, and she's advocating for congressional district racial quotas. Take a look here. This is clip 7.
I don't understand why your answer to Justice Kagan's question about is this a compelling state interest is no. The answer is obviously yes, that you have an interest in remedying the effects of racial discrimination that we identify using this tool. Whether you go too far in your remedy is another issue, right?
Your Honor, I think step 0 in all of these cases, it was certainly step 0 in the Robinson litigation, is the plaintiffs came in and said, we want another majority black district.
I thought they came in and said, we are not receiving equal electoral opportunity because our votes are being diluted.
Which is the same way of saying we deserve a second
No,
majority
it's
black
not,
district.
because that, again, just trust me on this. The second electoral or second district is a remedy that one could offer for a problem that we've identified. And the whole Robinson litigation was about identifying the problem. Is this really happening? In many, many Section 2 cases, the court says, you're wrong, you're fine. There is not an electoral opportunity being denied to you, go away. In this case, the court said, I see. I'm looking at the factors. I appreciate what you're saying. You've proven that we have this problem. And so the next question is, how do we go about remedying it?
But what is the problem?
Yes.
What is the problem?
From her perspective, the problem is that there is no longer an all-black majority-minority district that they can reliably, send Democrats into to get these low-information voters to vote for more Democrats.
But
That's
why
the
does
problem.
there have to be an all? To me, that's where I'm lost. I don't understand why there has to be an all-black representative district.
Because listen, if they had to compete, do you think they could?
Right. That's their thing. They starting with the low ball.
Yes.
That black people are not able to think in beyond skin color. So we put them in all black districts, or we carve out the district, and we only give them black people to vote for, and they will vote black. I mean, that's it. They're taking away the opportunities, the competition, they're taking away all of that because the Ketanji Brown Jacksons of the world believe ultimately in her arguments that black people are disabled and therefore they're dumb.
Listen.
Basically retarded.
Listen, the
before you go,
argument is-
Justice Clarence Thomas pushed back on this, folks. Take a look here. This is clip 8.
What role did Robinson play in the development of SB 8?
Justice Thomas, Robinson is the only reason SB 8 exists. We fought tooth and nail in the Robinson litigation itself in telling the courts that we did not think the Constitution permitted us to draw a second majority black district. As you know, under protest, we drew SB 8 because the threat was that the federal courts were going to do it if we didn't. And I think that's the best way to conceive of why SB 8 exists. We would never pass SB 8 in the first instance without Robinson, Justice Thomas.
What were the findings in Robinson?
The finding by the Middle District in Robinson was that the plaintiffs in this case were likely to show a violation of Section 2, and the likely violation, and I'm using very broad terminology because I do not know what the underlying violation is. I can't articulate that for you, Justice Thomas, because I don't think anybody can. But I think the finding in the district court's mind in that case was that the likelihood of a Section 2 violation meant that a majority black district was required, a second one. And I think like that was the bottom line, and when our legislature saw that, we understood the marching order, and that's why you see SB 8 as it exists today.
Just briefly, what were the findings that led to that conclusion?
Well, Your Honor, running through the preconditions and the totality of the circumstances, I mean, I think the totality of the circumstances did most of the work for the Middle District in Robinson. Senate Factor 1, the official history of past discrimination, Justice Thomas, we can never outrun the bad era of poll taxes, of grandfather clauses, of literacy tests. I think we're always going to lose across the board on that kind of analysis, and that's what the Middle District in Robinson focused on, is how bad was Louisiana in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and, you know, add all that together, and at the end you have a vote dilution finding that I don't think is clearly articulable in the way that SFFA requires a finding of discrimination to be specified.
All right. So again, yeah, it was a great argument. I mean, we can't use racial discrimination to fix these problems or racial quotas.
You can't out racism. You just can't. You cannot.
These people want it both ways, and I'll say this because discrimination, in theory, there's positive and negative discrimination, right? They want it both ways. Mm-hmm. They want the negative discrimination to stop, quote unquote, in their minds from the white people who's keeping them out of opportunities. But when the opportunity arises, they want the positive because they want mm-hmm. black people to be favored, mm-hmm. positively discriminated against everyone else. So they want it both ways. This is ludicrous. Go back to what we're supposed to do. Population, and you divide the districts based on the population. That's it. Regardless of who's in the district, skin color, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just divide it by the population of your state.
Nicole, so when they make these districts, what goes into making them? Because I'm confused on that.
Well, so it depends on who's in power, right? Mm-hmm. So here in Maryland, what goes into coming up with the decisions on what these districts look like are based on keeping them in power. Mm-hmm. Again, politics is not about
So it's
logic.
not about location.
No. We lived in Maryland with the broken winged pterodactyl for however. I mean, like Maryland's congressional map literally looked like a broken pterodactyl whose wing was back like this, whose head was this way. I mean, they did everything they needed to do to push us out of those 4 seats. And listen, as much as I want to cry and rant and rave about it, to the victor goes the spoils. That's how politics works. But they don't want it to work like that. They want it to be pre-gamed. What she's saying is, because of these past wrongs, because the state of Louisiana did this wrong back then, we need something that's going to level the playing field. And this is how we got all the Voting Rights Act amendments, not the original Voting Rights Act, but the amendments. Okay, so you've got these districts that are carved out. What they're saying is they don't even have the population for these districts anymore. We've got one that meets the federal criteria. Why do we need to draw a second one when the one we have is not even full? Right? Why do we need to continue to pay for the sins of our grandfathers today? It's not an issue for us today. It is not. But
my question is, even if it is all white districts, let's say the whole thing is all white districts, how can they say that is going to lead to that's what I'm. What are they saying?
They're using race as the criteria in that instance. Right. They're using skin color. They're not using the population.
Right.
Just for argument's sake, Maryland has about 6 million people. Let's just round it off. Technically, base apportionment would be 6 districts for 1 million people, just in theory. But if these districts, according to them, if all based on you, more white people or all white, then there's going to be black people going to be disabled, or they're disabled, so therefore they won't have the opportunities. Then you got to bring in the ADA because they need to carve out even more districts so that the black people, the disabled people, will have the opportunity to vote for a black person.
Even if it is a black person running, who's to say that they're?
That's the point.
I agree with
that.
They don't think that we can think like that.
They see us as children. Again, this is that maternalistic school of thought. Just imagine, if you would, if there was a wonderful Republican governor, and a wonderful Republican governor had a chance to do the redistricting and decided that Prince George's County needed to be busted up. There are too many Democrats in Prince George's. So we're going to add, 10,000 people from Prince George's into St. Mary's. And then we're going to add another 10,000 people from Prince George's to the Eastern Shore. That's diluting their vote.
Right.
That is breaking up a Democrat powerhouse, right? Let me tell you, there would be Democrats setting their baby's hair on fire.
But I get that. I mean, that's this. I understand the argument there because you're separating it based off of politics. So maybe somebody in that district is, but the racial thing makes no sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make any sense, but this is how they think.
Exactly.
Because remember, they don't think of people as individuals. They think of them in silos.
There you go.
Everybody has a silo. You don't get to get out your crab barrel unless we assign you a new barrel. And what she's saying is, you don't get to tell black people or minority people they can only have one district. What's the reason? We have a problem. There's a documented problem. Back in the day, there was a problem. We're not going to allow you to have another problem. And the remedy to the problem that you don't have is the continuation of the solution that we had for the problem way back when.
Exactly.
Circular logic.
Yeah.
Well, here's the good old NAACP arguing at SCOTUS that it's necessary to create race-based congressional districts because white Democrats were not voting for black candidates, whether they were Democrats or not. This is clip 6.
That's right. And in the state of Louisiana, that analysis was conducted in the Nairn case. And it was clear that regardless of party, white Democrats were not voting for black candidates, whether they were Democrats or not. And we know that there is such a significant chasm between how black and white voters vote in Louisiana that there's no question that even if there is some correlation between race and party, that race is the driving factor.
Can you comment on the Solicitor General's suggestion at page 20?
Well, they sound like a bunch of racists to me.
Yes.
I mean, I don't understand and how did Obama get elected?
Bottom line, in her argument, all white people are racist, and they're certainly even more racist because they don't vote for black people. I mean, that's it.
But what I'm saying is the whole reasoning that Ketanji Brown Jackson is saying that we need these black congressional districts. That sounds like they're racist, right?
But it does.
She's advocating, saying black people are only going to vote for black people.
That's the positive discrimination.
That is, but listen, you can't be mad at her. She's, how she got this job is because she was black at the right time of being black. So when you've been fed, you've only understood success based on this type of particular racism, but they don't call it racism. They call it a correction of past wrongs.
Right.
That correction of past wrongs is how you think you've gotten to power. Not because you worked harder than everybody else, not because you studied longer than everybody else, not because you knocked every door in the district 3 or 4 times, but simply because I'm black and you're black, you should vote for me.
That's it.
And that is what their whole philosophy is.
Wow.
Black people should vote for black people, and shame on white Democrats. Shame on you for not voting for black people. How dare you not vote for black people?
Exactly.
After what your culture put us through, you should vote for black people just on the strength of you being white.
That's it. It's almost a form of reparations for voting.
It absolutely is reparations.
Well, I really hope this is overturned. What is
white
it?
Guilt.
Overturned?
They go with that white guilt.
Oh my
They
God.
make them feel ashamed. They, like I said, they read those land grants at all their meetings, and we're living on stolen land and this and that. They live in a time and a space that doesn't make logical sense. It just does not.
My goodness, folks.